thanks for coming, everybody. We made this an open forum. We thought that Phil would like this. We talked to a lot of Phil's friends. Everybody, hey, I must be on time. My alarm's going off. So thanks a lot for coming. I just want to make a few comments. I'm going to turn it over to Ian and some of his friends. When Phil was about 10 years old, he saw two independent films. One was called Bottle Rocket, and one was called Clerks. And some of you may have seen these out there. And in the movie Clerks, there's these two. The tagline with Clerks is, just because they serve you doesn't mean they like you. And two of the guys in there were talking. The one guy says, it's ironic. I hate people, but I love gatherings. And Phil liked people, and he loved gatherings. And he would love this gathering. So thanks for coming. You got to bear with me. I'm going to try and get through this. Phil was a really mature kid. He listened. He talked to people. He was nice. He wanted people to do well. He wanted people to be happy. Phil did not have the typical DC, LA Schadenfreude of when people did poor. He was happy about that. He wasn't. He didn't have that in him. And so Phil liked art, music. He was just a terrific kid. And the outreach here has been great. He's had people coming from LA. All of his LA friends are here. And it's just been terrific. Phil could be a cynic. He could be a very funny cynic. He had some great lines. He was quick, and he could be cynic. But then again, somebody took him to independent films when he was 10 years old. So that probably has something to do with it. Phil's relationships were great. They started at Annunciation. Some of the Annunciation people are here, and it continued in Gonzaga. And the Gonzaga connection was so strong with Phil. A lot of the Gonzaga guys came down to visit him in Richmond, and they put together a 7-minute video that was compiled by 6 or 7 Gonzaga guys. I think it was a Mike Mann production, if I'm not mistaken. Good job on that, Mike. And I'll give you a plug. But Naroki's here, and her film is opening on Netflix, right, Naroki? Naroki, when's that opening up? Luckiest Girl with Mila Kunis, so Naroki's here, good job. But Mike did a terrific job in that, and I will tell you, when Phil was totally out of it, he would laugh at that video. And the nurses were cracking up. It was a 7-minute video. I'd show it to him twice a day, and he would just crack up at it. And it was touching, it was funny, it was edgy, and it was great. And the Gonzaga connection has been great for Phil, and it lives on. The USC, Phil went out to USC, and Alex Science, who is not here, but Alex's brother and father are here, has a great story about Phil and Mike and Alex leaving hot and humid DC when it's 100 degrees, and 2 weeks later, they're in LA at the Coliseum watching USC win the first of 45 games that they would win when those 3 guys were at USC. USC was 45-5 when they were there. And it was just a terrific time, and the USC connection was great. Phil was out there for 13 years, and it was just great. Phil had a different perspective on things, particularly as it related to sports. Phil was a coach's nightmare. He was absolutely a coach's nightmare, and he's everything good and everything bad about participation trophies. He knew that he couldn't get cut or anything, and he just used his teams as social opportunities to get to know kids. And he would know kids on other teams, and he would be talking to them during the games. And he just viewed sports. I used to say he laughed at competition, and someone said, "What?" And I said, "Now hear what I'm saying. He's not laughing at the competition. He's laughing at the whole concept of competition." He just thought it was so silly, and watching parents fight about kids, and he thought it was just a riot. And my favorite story about Phil with sports was he was 11 years old, and you all know out there, when you play Little League, you play when you're 11 and 12. 11 was his second to last year, and the last time up, Phil didn't really practice baseball or anything. His last at bat, when he was 11 years old, Phil was a lefty. He hit a shot down the right field line that was right out of textbook how a left-hander hits a line drive, over the first baseman, rolled to the fence. Phil got a triple. And Phil was so excited. Everybody's excited. People are shocked, like, where'd that come from? So after the game, I said to Phil, "Man, you can really use that, build on that." And and Phil's going, "Yeah, okay." And next 9 months later, when they're having tryouts for the 12-year-old, which is the last year in Little League, it would be in February, and this was Northwest Little League, and we had the tryouts. Bambi is here. We had the tryouts at St. Albans, and anybody who's played baseball knows the anxiety of having baseball tryouts indoor in the winter, because they use rubber-covered hardballs on rubber mounds, and the balls are flying all over the place. It's like you're in a pinball machine. So about a week before, I'm talking to Phil, and I said, "Hey, Phil, you want to go to the batting cage?" "Yeah, I don't know." "Okay, well, what do you think?" I said, "Phil, then," and I go into my pitch again. I said, "Phil, you had the greatest bat. You can really build on that. Remember your last at bat? It was so great, and you can really build on that." And he stopped me, and he said, "You know, how about if that's my last at bat?" and he did an Obi-Wan Kenobi mind meld thing on me, and I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Isn't that great? That would be my last at bat." I said, "Okay, buddy, that's good." So that's how Phil viewed his sports, and that's why I said he was a coach's nightmare. And then my final points of Phil would be, we all know how Phil liked movies, and he would appreciate and enjoy smart comedies like Rushmore, and stupid comedies like Happy Gilmore. He was really pretty broad with that. He would like dramas like Training Day, and he would like nuanced rom-coms like Groundhog Day. And when Phil died, he had a smile, peaceful smile on his face, and everybody noticed it, and it was great. It was very peaceful. So, using Phil's movie themes, any religious metaphor you can come to, pick your film, 2001 or Cocoon or Gattaca or Another Earth, where someone at the end of the film is going to another astral plane. That's where I am with Phil. I think he's on another astral plane. I think he's doing just fine. And he's traveling on with a smile on his face. So here's Phil.
All right, I'll do my best here. Thanks everybody for coming out. Phil and I were 2.5 years apart, and I can't say we had the most conventional older-younger brother relationship. You know, we weren't out throwing the football usually or anything like that. That wasn't totally his thing. He was a unique guy. He was a very good artist, as you can see. He could draw. He played guitar. He knew history. He had a quick wit, sometimes cynical, as my dad said, and he was funny. And then there was the movies. Goddamn, Phil knew a lot about movies. I know a lot about movies, and I had no idea what he was talking about roughly half the time. A few people have said to me during this that the thing that stuck out most was he had a very kind heart. It stuck with me. It's true. He really, really cared about others more. One thing I always noticed and appreciated is that, even when he wasn't doing great, didn't seem like he was doing great in the last few years probably, he would always genuinely ask about Katie or my daughter Clara and how they were doing or how I was doing or how one of my friends was doing. And, it was not an act. I mean, he genuinely cared. He was probably the last person that was putting on an act. That was not the way Phil rolled. So he really was others first at all times, even when he might have been struggling. So also just want to acknowledge Phil. Phil struggled. I'm not going to harp on this, but I think it's a reminder to me to take care of yourself, take care of the people you love, reach out to people. If you think someone's struggling or you think someone's in an issue, they probably are. So just a good reminder for me and probably for all of us just to love your loved ones and love each other. Throughout all this, I want to thank and give love to my parents, to my extended family, Katie, Clara, the Donleys, all of Phil's friends, all of my friends, for all your love and support. It's been amazing, and it's made a difference to us, the family. What we've had the chance to appreciate during this time with everyone reaching out is just how many people Phil really did impact and made feel good. It wasn't something you always saw on the surface, but he clearly had a huge impact on a ton of people. He was a great brother in a unique way, and I love him and I'll miss him. So, to Phil.
Hey everybody, so I'm Terrence, for anyone who doesn't know me. I'm just so glad to see how many people could come out here and really celebrate Phil's life. To be honest, I think this part of the day, Phil might have felt a little uncomfortable and something where he'd be kind of begging to get out of here, maybe looking over at me and saying, come on, let's go. I know everybody here has a million stories and memories that highlight Phil's genius, whether it's through his accomplishments, his obvious talent with music, art, writing. But I think that something that everyone can acknowledge and is obvious was his unrelenting and unique sense of humor. The thing about Phil was he really didn't seem to care what anyone else thought about his humor. Sometimes his jokes could be a little dark, a little strange, but if he liked the joke, or more importantly, his friends liked the joke, that's all that really mattered, right? I remember at one point a few years back, Phil wanted to start a podcast together. He just wanted to base it on our typical interactions, which basically meant that he would say something completely random and outrageous, and I would just provide some sort of color commentary, bring it back to earth, right? Occasionally, we scrapped that project actually because we realized the only people we were making laugh was ourselves. So we kind of moved on. I met Phil for the first time as a freshman at Gonzaga. We were on stage, we were in the same gym class, so every day we'd line up in alphabetical order for Coach Maddox. It would be Graham and then Hardy, right? Every day for the entire school year. And this is where I got the first glimpse of Phil's unique sense of humor and where Phil's, maybe the first nickname that I knew of, came from. During roll call, he'd always want to say his name so fast that instead of saying Phil Graham, it would really come out more like Pilgrim. Eventually, he was just saying Pilgrim to speed things up, and also just so he could kind of get a laugh afterwards that he pulled one over on Coach Maddox. Eventually, Maddox did catch on and put an end to it real quick. So, but with Phil's creativity and love for creating stories and personas, there's no wonder he flew across the country to get straight A's studying history and film in LA. Phil had so many ideas and personas he made up over the years that I can't barely remember all of them. So, you know, if any of you guys can remember any of his Philspirations, I would really love to hear some. Shout out to one of my favorite personas of Phil's, Byron Powerhouse, which would eventually go on to inspire the name of our very influential and underrated band, where Phil was the lead guitar and he crushed it. Alexi and I always said, because we were all three of us were in the band, we always said that he should go by Byron Powerhouse as his stage name. But he always said that it would be way funnier if that was just the name of our band and no one really knew why or who was Byron Powerhouse. So I mean, I didn't really get it, but the way I remember it, and Alexi can probably back me up on this, it was about 30% of the time rehearsing for the band, about 10% of the time just doing improvised jam sessions, and then about 60% of the time was Alexi trying to get me and Phil to focus. And even a few months ago, we were laughing about the fact that there are some lost tapes out there somewhere that we're trying to track down, and who knows if we'll ever find them. Throughout the years, Phil and I would talk every couple weeks or so. Most of you probably know that if you caught Phil on the phone, you were going to be talking to Phil for kind of a long time. One time I asked Phil if he would prefer just maybe text me, and he basically told me to F off. Which, looking back, I really appreciate now because we had a lot of long, good chats. Most of the conversations we'd spent hearing about what was on the top of Phil's mind that week, who he's, retelling old stories or catching up on, who we've seen lately, what's going on with our friends, and things like that. I don't think there was really anything that Phil found more valuable than his family and his friendships. Except for maybe that original Batman sketch from Frank Miller that he had signed and he would refer to as his retirement plan. I do know that Phil loved each and every one of you, and your love and friendship really meant the world to him. I'll never forget Phil. I guess so, yeah. That's all. That's all I got. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. My name's Mike Mann. I went to Gonzaga with Phil for 4 years, and then we also spent 4 years together at USC. So Phil's one of my oldest and dearest friends. First, I want to relay a message from one of Phil's good friends from USC, Brian Shearer and Kate London, who unfortunately could not make it today due to a COVID outbreak at their house. Brian, Phil, Freddie, Drew, and I, we lived in a disgusting apartment on Adams Boulevard, just north of campus. And Phil, ever the matchmaker, after weeks of scheming, concocted a plan to make sure that Kate and Brian sat next to a casual get-together where we got a couple drinks, that turned into more drinks and turned into a hazy night. Flash forward to a dozen years later, Brian and Kate are happily married with a beautiful daughter and another young one coming later this year. And as Brian wanted to express to everybody, Phil's life led to two more, and I can't thank him enough for that. So I think let's give Phil a round of applause for that. As some people have said already, like Phil had a film knowledge like nobody I've ever met. And our sophomore year of college, Phil was taking a film criticism course on the works of Martin Scorsese. And as many of you know, Phil was passionate about film. But I have to tell you, a film criticism course at the University of Southern California is like Top Gun. It's the best of people who can find these minute details and expand them into something that's just very readable and accessible. And so we're sitting at lunch talking about the paper and how to tackle such a massive subject. And Phil suddenly lit up with this massive grin across his face. And he said to me, "Robert De Niro almost never plays Italian people in Martin Scorsese movies, Philspiration." And I was like, no way. Robert De Niro always plays Italian people in Scorsese movies. That's known. And he goes, "Nope. That is not true. Jimmy Conway, Goodfellas, can't be a made man because he's half Irish. Casino, Sam Rothenstein, based on Jewish gambler Lefty Rosenthal. Cape Fear, Max Cady, King of Comedy, Rupert Pumpkin, New York, Jimmy Doyle, Philspiration." So he runs away from the lunch to go to the library. 5 hours later, he comes back, and he has a perfectly crafted paper explaining the difference between the public perception of Robert De Niro and what he actually plays in his roles. And at University of Southern California film criticism course, got a complete perfect score, A. Like, never read a paper that was better than that in the entire time I was there. I, on the other hand, got to use this brain as my first line of defense for my terrible papers on how Arrested Development has lots of running gags and things like that. So Phil would read my papers, give me some notes. I would make thousands of changes based on Phil notes, and I would get a B-. In the fall of 2005, I saw Phil. So Phil and I lived together for 2 years. And in the fall of 2005, I saw Phil reading The New Yorker. And I was like, la-di-da, look at this fancy boy. But he was crying laughing about a short story that he read by a guy named Jack Handey. And Phil loved Jack Handey. He loved Saturday Night Live. And I was like, what are you reading? Like, what are you laughing so much at in The New Yorker? My dad reads The New Yorker. My dad's lame. And he said, it's called What I'd Say to the Martians. The article was what I'd come to know as pure Phil. It was absurd yet smart, silly, and at the same time definitely satirical. It's too long to recite here, but it was eye-opening to me as a 19-year-old to know that these imposing magazines were accessible to someone like me. Like, I didn't realize that I'd become an adult, and I was making that move. Phil had made that move several years beforehand. And I think to owe it to Phil, I will recite one of Phil's favorite Jack Handey bits from a Saturday Night Live right now. One thing kids like is to be tricked. For instance, I was going to take my nephew to Disneyland, but instead I drove him to an old burned down warehouse. "Oh no," I said, "Disneyland burned down." He cried and cried, but I think deep down he thought it was a pretty good joke. I started to drive over to the real Disneyland, but it was getting pretty late. That to me is just the perfect epitome of what Phil's humor, and like, it was just this silly nonsense, totally absurd thing, but it was written by a guy who wrote for The New Yorker and wrote for Saturday Night Live, and like, that was just the epitome of Phil to me. And the breadth and depth of Phil's expertise at such a young age will never cease to amaze me. For me, it was life-changing. I remember a day or a night after couple cocktails, and we're sitting in our dorm room at USC our freshman year, and we start saying, what are our favorite songs? And I put out like The Strokes or something like that. And Phil, Phil says, Gabriel's Oboe, which is an instrumental woodwind piece written by Ennio Morricone from the 1986 film The Mission. And I was like, what is going on right now? But to this day, I listen to that song to calm myself as a mechanism on tough days. It's a beautiful piece. I encourage all of you to look at it. It's incredible. And he knew this I'm 35 now, and he was 17 years old, and he knew he was able to. Yeah, I don't know if I'm expressing myself well, but he was able to understand what a piece of music or art or film could do to somebody. In the fall of 2004, we shared our favorite movies. I said American Pie. Phil said Miller's Crossing, which I think is a testament to Steve, his independent film introduction to Phil. So we ordered it on Netflix, which I don't know if there's any kids out here. Netflix was a thing where you would send a DVD back to them, and they would send something back to you 15 days later, and it would be scratched and wouldn't work, and then you would do the process over and over again. But Miller's Crossing arrived, and I got to admit, it's a little bit better than American Pie. I guess what I'm trying to say is that while attending a wonderful university filled with accomplished professors, Phil Graham taught me more about taste and culture and how to have a good opinion than any other person I've ever met. I'm forever in his debt for that. If you could say anything about Phil, is that he had a gift for gab and an indelible pleasure at the multitudes of ways that words could affect you. A favorite word of mine comes from the Portuguese, and it's called saudade. It's a melancholic longing for someone who will never return. But the beauty in the word is that it contains immense feelings of pleasure and happiness. The only reason such a void can exist is because an equal or greater amount of love existed as well. Phil's death for me is a beautiful sadness, one that can only be born of the deepest love. Phil brought so much joy to me through the years, from the countless hours dancing to the Talking Heads, and more specifically David Byrne, to the hundreds of conversations about the Coen brothers, to the soothing calm of Gabriel's Oboe. He was a unique person, sensitive, funny, and most of all, kind. I will miss him greatly, but I'll always remember Phil, because I'm a better person for knowing him and being able to call him my friend.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ryan Nelson. I went to graduated Gonzaga with Phil. To the Grahams, Ian and Steve and Geraldine, Phil's extended family and everyone here, I'm so sorry and extend my condolences and, more importantly, my support in any way that I can. I know I speak for all of our Gonzaga friends here when I say that please, if there's any way we can help in the coming months, please do not hesitate to reach out. We will all get through this together. Phil's kindness, sense of humor, friendship, and love affected us all here positively. Let's start with his kindness. There's one example I can give, and I will stress this as an example. This did not actually specifically happen, but you'll know what I mean when I say it. Phil had an innate way about him to be friendly and relate to people. I always noticed when I talked with Phil about music. He loved music, and while he had a specific and very good taste in music, he also never judged your taste in music. I could go to Phil and say, hey, have you heard that new Taylor Swift song? It's actually really good. Now, if I said that to any of the Gonzaga guys in this room, I would have been met with a scoff and some juvenile slander. Phil, on the other hand, would say something like, oh, you mean the one that's like, shake it off? Yeah, I love that song. It's really good. It's really catchy. And then he'd say something like, Did you know that she was actually on Mickey Mouse Club when Mark Wahlberg and his brother Donnie were directing episodes? That's where she actually got her start before country music. Phil wasn't about judging you or your poor taste in music. Phil's sense of humor. His sense of humor was very unique and goofy, and he loved awkward situations more than anyone I know. On the goofy front, he once told me a story of when he was at Terrence's house in D.C. This wasn't his current house, this was an old house, and it had roof access, but only if you climbed through a ladder and out a hatch, as if you were coming up from below deck. Well, one night Phil was coming back from the roof, and he missed a step on the ladder and went rocketing down from the top of the ladder to the floor. Miraculously, he landed on his feet unscathed, and anyone who knows Phil knows that is truly an act of God. He explained this in his animated way, and he says, so I go flying down the ladder, and bam, I land on my feet, and I'm like, oh my God, hell yeah, Phil. And for those of you that didn't see that, he slapped himself on the chest and the backside. Not a pat on the back, which is kind of what he meant, or pounding his chest, but no, a chest to rear end slap. I'll never forget that. Lastly, Phil's friendship. From since I can remember, including up to these last few years, Phil and I would talk about once a month, many times for a long time, as Terrence was alluding to. We'd talk about movies and what was going on, nothing specific. We'd joke about the ridiculousness of current events, our favorite new stand-up specials, movies, or whatever. I'll miss those calls from Phil and those rants. That's who Phil was as a friend. He cared to keep in touch, to make you laugh, not to take yourself too seriously. Phil loved immensely, and I will sorely miss every part of Phil as a friend over the last 20 years. I know I will carry parts of Phil with me and his spirit for the rest of my life. And moving forward from now on, if I ever do something I'm especially proud of, I won't pat myself on the back, I won't pound my chest, I'll just give myself a nice chest-to-ass slap and know that Phil from heaven is proud of me too. Cheers.
Hi everyone, Nate Thompson. I'm one of Phil's Gonzaga friends.
Wait a minute. Before Nate starts, the 7-minute video that Gonzaga made, the nurses want Nate to go in the movies. It was the funniest section of the video. Good job, Nate.
Thank you for that. The hair helps as a good prop when it's in pigtails. I'm Phil's friend, and that's really just what I want to talk about, is how good of a friend he was. Everyone heard tonight about how smart he is, how much he knows about everything, and I think what his greatest quality was and why I enjoyed him so much was that, to kind of channel his improv, ad-lib, Hollywood approach, Phil was the ultimate yes and friend. You hear so much these days, I think, of no because and no, and from people who don't really know what they're talking about. And Phil knew everything about everything and had such a wonderful way of engaging in me and talking with me where I could say something that absolutely made no sense and was 100% wrong, and he would turn to be like, yes, and we would keep going. And I could riff with him for hours. Often that's what phone conversations were. They went that long, even when it was like, oh, and I'll get the kids to bed now, Phil. Yeah, that reminds me of the time when blah, blah, blah. And we just went. And he had such a gracious way of leading me along to, a place I didn't even know I was trying to go, while just being that best friend and talking with me. And over these last few years, for a variety of circumstances, that's what our relationship became a lot. Long talks on the phone, long calls, and it just was one of my favorite ways to just disconnect from everything, talk to Phil, and really feel that bonding. I would, find myself walking through the woods with the dog or driving, like, oh, that's what I have to tell Phil, or that's what I need to bring up with Phil. And it was always that. It was yes, and I just valued that so much in him. I like to tell a story with my wife, Jen, when we had our first, our daughter. She was maybe 4 or 5 months old, and we were just having some folks over, a little gathering, and everyone had shown up and said hi, congrats, and whatnot. And Phil comes through the door. The first thing he has is maybe like a $1.99 little cheap bottle, probably made in China. He's like got it in 7-Eleven. And I'm not saying that's what he rolled into 7-Eleven to get. He was on the way here to hang out, but he walked out the door with it. And first thing he said was, all right, just basically taking shut. Like, he didn't want to talk about it. It was some effort to just take it and get away from me. And I was like, thank you, Phil. And we put it up in our cupboard. And, you know, you have baby showers. Everyone gives you these incredible gifts. You're kind of, oh, who'd that come from? Or what's that about? And we still look up and we see that bottle sitting there unused. But it's all about the sentimental value of it. And there it is. And we talk about Phil. We say, God, had such a spectrum to him. He was such an amazing guy. He was a caring guy and brilliant and hilarious. And to me, in terms of a comedic sense, I think his spirit animal is Norm Macdonald. That's who I know he loved and, who he associated with. When Norm passed, Phil took it really hard. We were actually like talking about it for a while. And I just now like to think about Phil up there on the desk, Norm Macdonald live with him, and taking Adam Egan's spot and doing a much better job, and them sitting back and looking down and remarking on things in the world. And I know when I'm, with the dog in the woods doing whatever, I'm going to keep sending things up to him and hear the yes and he'll always be there for me and for us. So to Phil.
Hey everybody. So you know about the big Gonzaga connection. There are a couple of folks who weren't here who just sent messages that I've offered to read for them. So I'll go through those and then give a comment. So this is from Alex Science. Couldn't be here today. I know he's visited the family and Phil recently. But so just reading for him here. Phil and I met in high school, then we went to USC together. About 1 week into USC, we became the best of friends. We bonded mostly in the school's cafeterias over our love of eating and people watching. Phil and I went on to have an extremely close friendship for the next 15 years. He was the most amazing friend. He was always there for me. So one of my favorite Phil stories is during one of my hardest relationship breakups. I was at home sulking. Phil came over and demanded I get it together. He took me for dinner at one of our favorite spots in Westwood. As I sat at the table, extremely upset, Phil relentlessly battered me with compliments and told me how well I was doing. And then when I tried to speak out, and then when I tried to sneak out of the restaurant to go back home, but still visibly upset, he wouldn't let me. He kept me there and continued to help me talk through the situation. He didn't even blink an eye. He dropped everything for me that night. Phil sincerely cared for his friends. If I could tell Phil anything right now, it would be two things. The first I would say is that I'm so proud of you, Phil. I'm so proud of the mark you have left all of us with. We are better because of you. Anybody in Phil's presence left Phil feeling happier. I'm so proud of the life he lived because of his impact. The second thing I would say is thank you. I am the man I am today because of Phil's role in my life, and I owe him a lot for that. And I owe him a lot of thanks. Phil never loved displays of affection from me. I gave him a lot of hugs and kisses over the past few weeks. So I know he is going to have a bone to pick with me when I see him next. I love you, Phil. Again, that was from Alex Science. And I have another quick thing from Andres McAllister. Sorry, everybody, you got to deal with the Gonzaga love fest here, and Phil would just tell you to go fuck off and listen. And he would be mad if I didn't get up here and curse at you, so sorry about that. This is from Andres. To Phil, a comedic muse amongst boys, I will always appreciate your sense of humor and laugh. The first time I met Phil, we were newly minted freshmen at Gonzaga, sitting in a class gathering in the theater. Using our collective awkwardness, we immediately began to riff one another jokingly, giving each other nicknames. He was Byron Powerhouse, and I was Gavin St. John. What could easily have been something left there that day emerged as a 20-plus year back and forth that provided laughs on end. I am thankful for all the times we spent together. your mark will live on in all the future Gonzaga boys get-togethers. Sending you and your family my love until we meet again, my brother. Big hugs from Kyrgyzstan, which is where Andres is right now. I'm not sure I said that right. Anyways, for myself, don't have anything written here, but Phil was a great friend. He was it's just amazing to hear the stories already from you guys. And, I know as a group, we've done an amazing job sticking together over these years and looking out for each other. And we did that a lot for Phil and with Phil. So thank you, everyone in our group, for doing that. It's not easy. And then Mr. Graham, his love of film and comedy, is just like so unique. And, as you can see, touched all of us in amazing ways. And, that's because of you. And he talked about that a lot. And music. And you were telling us, the music you took him to see. Sorry, jeez. Jesus Christ. Phil would be fucking slapping me right now. Get my shit together. Yeah, seriously. No, I fucking love you, Phil, man. I'm gonna miss you. You're so kind. My family loves you. You mean the world to us. And, thank you, everybody.
Real quick, I am Katie, Phil's sister-in-law, and we wanted to share the best man wedding speech that Phil gave at our wedding, at Ian and my wedding in 2019. Phil had a real way with words always, fluent in movie speak, and always had a story at the ready about when he and Ian were little. But some of the words that I really cherish the most are in this speech because they really illustrate just how sincere of a guy he was. And I feel like anybody could insert themselves for Ian and me in this video and feel the love that he was showering on us in the same way.
Chris Donnelly for putting this all together. It's truly a magnificent venue for this type of event and celebration of love between two people who definitely deserve it. Me and Ian are brothers, and like most brothers, we went to the same schools together. Annunciation, Gonzaga, etc. But we had a thing called Kairos, which was a retreat. And on that retreat, we would write letters to each other and talk about your feelings and everything like that. I wrote Ian a letter when I was a freshman in college. It was good stuff. And in that, I always thought this was a genius moment where I said, I never thought of you as a younger brother, but always a friend and an equal. 3,000 miles away. I believe Ian opened this and thought, we're not equals. I'm so much better than you. But nevertheless, you're always protective of your brother and vice versa. Ian's always been protective of me. And seeing him grow personally and professionally in the way that he has been just such a great thing to see. And I trust his intuitiveness, his intelligence, and his capacity for loving new events. So when he introduced me to Katie, I wasn't surprised to find out that she was as beautiful, graceful, charming, intelligent, genius as she is. But that wasn't a big surprise. Then when I saw them together, it was kind of a bittersweet moment because I realized that this is somebody that will know, understand, and cherish Ian more than I even could. And if that isn't love, I don't know what is. I'll be on your couch a bunch of times, probably. And I wish you so many amazing futures, and you'll accomplish more both individually and together than any of us could ever hope